Hello and welcome everybody to another live session with us at Dreamdata. We call these shows attributed, and today the show is attributed to Brendan Hufford, who said yes to join us to talk about all the things that makes our lives in B2B marketing miserable. The marketing playbooks that's secretly killing our B2B content, which I hope we don't do all of them at Dreamdata, but we'll find out. Before we start, I just want to say thanks to everybody who's watching and listening, and do treat this as a conversation that you're part of. So type in the questions you have as the conversation go along. If you're just listening to this on a podcast, make sure to reach out to Brendan afterwards, and I'm sure he'll be happy to engage with you. Brendan is joining today because I've been following him for, I would say, even years by now. He's posting a lot of interesting stuff around B2B content, SEO, thought leadership, even doing videos now and then. So if you kind of want to educate yourself on B2B content, go follow Brendan on LinkedIn. But Brendan, that was my quick introduction of you. I'm sure there's a few more details for those who have not seen you before, who have not listened to you, who have not worked for you. Can you give us just kind of the quick intro to your work and life?
Yeah, absolutely. The short version is I went to school to be a high school teacher. I went to college to be a high school teacher because we let 18-year-olds take on a ton of debt and decide what they want to do with their lives, which is so silly. I wouldn't trust my 18-year-old self with much else. But I went to school to be a teacher. I did that for 10 years. I realized I was climbing the ladder. I got, my degree in educational administration and everything. Just realized that ladder was kind of leaned up against the wrong wall. And I'd been building things on the side, little side hustles, little projects. I taught myself everything, how to build websites, affiliate marketing, email marketing, social. Back in the day of 100% Facebook reach, if anybody remembers those glory days. I know it's kind of like maybe dating myself a little bit. But I built all these little side projects, and then, just was trying to leave teaching, build my own business, and ended up joining a couple really cool agencies, worked with a lot of B2B SaaS companies, helped reposition one agency, scaled it from 10 to 25 million a year in revenue. And then went in-house at a company called Active Campaign, which some people might be familiar with, pretty big, $100+ million revenue company. And then just a couple of years ago, went out on my own. I think in April, the beginning of May, I usually put May 1 as the anniversary of going out on my own. So this May 1st will actually be 3 years of running growth sprints.
Super cool. It's funny how this teaching experience is probably not the worst you can have if you want to go into content, being aware about that there's something that's complex here and you need to get other people to understand it as well. I've done a lot of teaching during my university career. It was as like a side job during university, but having to stand on a stage or having to stand in a room explaining stuff to people that they don't know about, it's not the worst way to get into content.
No, if you think about content marketing, I think about the 3 E's a lot, like educate, empower, and entertain. And that is 100% my experience of teaching high school, because those kids will, they'll eat your lunch. If you're not if you're not teaching them something, if you're not entertaining them and you're not empowering them to like do something with it, they have no time for you. And it is an absolute bloodbath for teachers that aren't good at that. I got lucky that it was a nice like Venn diagram overlap between like my natural skill set to be very extroverted, and also like just really caring about these things. And it turns out, I could never have said it then that like, oh, this is training for a future career. But looking back, it's so clear.
Yeah, that's super nice. I think one of the times I've been writing to you, Brendan, was kind of like in a desperate night or afternoon, just wanting to improve our SEO efforts and just like sending you a note. Oh, what are we doing wrong? Why are we not getting more traffic? And I think you just took that notion down that as such, you're maybe not super interested in SEO as the main driver of your work. It seems like there's a different purpose, or you're coming at it from a different angle. Maybe you can just try to let people understand kind of how is it that you obviously a later outcome is that SEO, like organic search, grows up and it becomes a big channel for you. But it doesn't seem like that's where you start when you work with your clients.
This is a really good distinction. So I think what I realized over time, and I'm not trying to talk down to anybody. I'm very empathetic for marketers. What I realized over time is that people in the SEO industry kind of go one of two directions over time. This was my background. I came up in SEO. It's how I built all my early websites. It's how I got my first job. I was the SEO director at a web design agency, later the SEO director at that B2B SaaS agency, and did a lot of SEO stuff when I was at Active Campaign. So this is still a core part of my skill set. It's still an entry point for how people find me and hire me. And so I realized over time, though, that SEO people go one of two directions. Either they take the right turn to business land and they learn other parts of the business, and they learn things like attribution, and they learn things like, I don't know, all these other channels. They learn all these other concepts. They learn buyer psychology. That's the turn I made. Other people take the turn and they triple down on SEO, and they're super into their crawlers, and they're like, EEAT and all the whatever the Google reps are saying that week. They read every single blog on search engine land. They're obsessed with keyword research. They do not talk to humans. They don't want to talk to humans. They're kind of like web devs. They're not really marketers in the way that, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you're optimizing a website for search, and a lot of them are not talking to people. And you can see that in like a lot of the output that we see coming out of like SEO teams or people. And again, like that has a place, like that is really valuable to some companies and things like that. I just took the other path. So I look at search as a still very, very, as much as everybody wants to say it's dead, please, if you're saying SEO is dead, please keep preaching that. It makes it easier for me. Tell everybody to stop doing it. It makes my job easier and makes me look better. Everybody, if you're watching or listening to this, stop doing SEO. It's dead.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I think I've heard SEO is dead since 2008 or something like that.
I have a post on one of my on my SEO for the Rest of Us blog that documents every time and links out to every single time major websites have said SEO is dead. That's awesome. Funny. It's so good.
It's funny. SEO was actually also one of my first loves in marketing, because I joined like he was actually a teacher plus rock musician that had kind of this idea back in the 2020 something to make like a website for vintage music instruments, and like each shop owner could then list their instruments, and in the end we had like plus 10,000 instruments or something like that. So you wanted your Fender Stratocaster from 1972 to be that one that popped up on Google when people were searching for it. So I had to like really drill deep on what worked in SEO in the 2020, something like that. But the good story is that we really succeeded with SEO, but that company kind of went bankrupt because revenue didn't spike consistently
100%.
Together with the SEO. And I think actually that kind of my kind of first lesson is that traffic is not enough. Pure traffic is definitely not enough in a B2B company. There needs to be a purpose, there needs to be an outcome, there needs to be an intent from this work that you do. And I think that also led me along the path where you've gone, where you want to try and understand a bit more about the business side of things.
Yeah, and I think that's when I think about content, or when I think about anything, I want things that do more than one thing for the business. And if the only thing your thing does for the business is search traffic, and then maybe that turns into awareness, which maybe turns into a customer, it's such a leading metric. I think about pages that do more than one thing for the business. Like, yes, this might pull in search traffic, but is it also good enough that if we emailed it to people, they would want that? Is it also good enough that people are using it for buyer enablement? Is the sales team also using it for sales enablement? Like, I want, as much as possible, we have to get those done first. And if you have all of those, you have every single one of those kind of pages, then you can look at stuff that is maybe more focused. You can create content just for social, just for search, just for email. You can get like a little more focused in these channels and things like that. But at first, it has to be multi-channel content and multi-use within the company. And I think that's something that I do a little bit differently. The other thing I do differently is just like running in sprints. I think it's funny, internally in companies, most people, a lot of them run in sprints. This is what I did when I got to Active Campaign. I put together a list for my boss of here's all the things I want to work on. And we just went through timeline, knock them out. All these. And then I would discover more things as I was digging into stuff. I would find more opportunities to do really cool stuff. I found huge email contact lists that we weren't sending anything to, despite being an email marketing company. And then I would just add those to the list. And that informed a lot when I left, like not wanting to work on a retainer like most other SEO people do. So I have a lot of objections and differentiation with how a lot of things have been done for a long time.
Can you just go a little bit more into the sprints term? Because I think I know what you're hinting at, but just to kind of bring everybody along.
Yeah, of course. So the way that most SEO agencies operate is they sell SEO takes 6 to 12 months. It's an ongoing effort. It goes on
Yeah, here's our
forever.
retainer.
Weird that SEO takes 6 to 12 months as they slide their 6 to 12 month retainer across the table.
Yeah.
Now that might be true in some cases, right? If you're working with very low tech companies who don't understand everything, they don't have a team, they don't have any savvy marketers, like, yeah, maybe you do need to be on a retainer for 6 months because you're really hand holding them. But usually that's like a local business or something. It's not the audience that I work with, which is a lot of B2B SaaS and software companies. They have teams, they have smart people. They almost always, the clients that I work with are smarter than, I would say always, like they're always smarter than me. I just know some different things than them. So they don't need that hand holding. So most of my work, I noticed when I was inside of agencies, we would do all this work at the front, all these audits, all this like busy work. And then, oh my God,
Well, you're
pay us
paying us
for
by
3
the hour,
months of
so
audits.
we have to
Maybe
do
wanna
the
throw up.
audit, and then we need to do a presentation, and
We got
then
to do a
another.
backlink audit. We got to do a competitor audit. We got to do a content audit. We got to do a technical audit. And that's 4 months.
I've heard all those from the agencies out there.
Steffen, 4 months and you're not getting anything done because you're just auditing.
Yeah.
Miss me with that. Go straight to jail. I don't want anything to, like, what are we doing? So
Maybe
anyways,
maybe just to steal your story a little bit, Brendan. I think it's a good plug for getting us on to talk about checkbox marketing. But I think just by inserting sprints, which means capping things by
yes,
time, you force yourself to actually say the game is over at some point. And then you can look back at the game, or you can plan the next game, which forces you to think about what did you do, how does the metrics look from these outcomes, rather than just being in this, what you call, I guess that's what you call checkbox marketing, that here's the year, here's one day, here's the next day, here's the next month, here's the next quarter. But there's actually no reflection built into that. That's probably some of what you like with the sprints, right?
yeah, I love it. I love being able to have like an end date of like,
Yeah.
hey, and this is just good for a relationship of like, hey, we finish it over, two-hand overhead high five. We've done it. Let's get working on the next thing versus just, I'm going to drip these things out to you forever. 2 of this, 4 of the, every month you get 4 backlinks and 2 blog posts. And it's like, when do we assess? When do we know when we've done it? When do we know? And then it's constantly this cat and mouse game of like, well, we got to do a little more. We got to do a little more. We still got a couple more things to do before we see whether this is really working or not. I just didn't, that stuff, Steffen, so much of my business is built in the way I think is the right way to build it, but it's also built just to be like not stressful for me.
Yeah.
And all these other like even like how I put pricing on my website, because I hated playing the game of like, let me guess how much money you have and then say that's how much I cost.
Yeah.
Exhausting to me.
Yeah.
I'd rather just be like, here's a price I'm happy with. Does that work for you? And a lot of times I'm sure if I looked at some sort of data, I would find that a lot of people start filling out my form and then get to that question and then and that's good. They should close the tab. They should close the window because we're not a fit to work together. But it's still different than a lot of the ways that other places do it.
I think it's also about adding, at least when I reflect on how our team, but sometimes when we have the bigger deadlines, the kind of month or 2 leading up to that sort of becomes a sprint. So everybody kind of rallies and say, okay, this is the deadline. Now we need to perform. But once we're over that, we can kind of sit back and relax and breathe out a little bit before we jump on the next bigger project. So, and like it can get the team around, okay, we're nearing the finishing line. Let's just get the last projects out there. So we've kind of completed this sprint.
Yeah, otherwise you run into the never-ending goalposts moving, right? It's just like, let's just keep pushing them down. You never finish. You never feel good. It's like, well, we had a great quarter, best quarter in company history. Do it again, more. That's exhausting.
That's probably our plug, Brendan, to go into kind of defining the checkbox marketing and what is it, and like what is it that you're seeing. You work with so many different companies, so what is what's the behavior out there where you need to kind of like get out of the loop and actually start reflecting on what you're doing with this checkbox marketing?
So I think one of the early things that a lot of companies noticed is that they were doing what I would call like random acts of marketing, right? They're doing all sorts of just random stuff. This week we're doing this, next week we're doing that. Then we'll launch a podcast, then a webinar. Should we write a blog? Sure. Maybe we send out an email next week. Like there's just random, just taking shots in the dark of what to do for marketing. So they tried to solve that and they tried to fix it. The problem is I kept hearing B2B is boring. B2B marketing is boring. It's boring. B2B is boring. It was everywhere. It was all over LinkedIn. It was in all the communities I was in. And I was like sitting down and I'm like, why is this so? I didn't disagree with the premise. A lot of it is boring. And I'm like, why? And I realized I looked back at my own experiences. I looked back, I've interviewed, 20 plus marketing leaders at this point for my newsletter, all these different things. And I was like, I know why it's boring. It's because everybody's just running it off a spreadsheet or Asana or Trello, or I don't care what you're using to organize it, but it's a blog a week, a podcast every other week, one webinar per month, one email. Like it's just a number per time. And they're just going down and checking the boxes. All right, did I do my blog? Good. Got it out the door. Next. And it was the same thing when I was in house. We were working harder than ever. We were producing more than ever. And the numbers were not going up. And I was like, we're doing just boring generic work at scale, as one says in tech. And like, it just wasn't doing anything for us. And it wasn't having any discernible impact. And I was kind of frustrated with it. And I realized we were checking all the boxes except the boxes that matter. And the ones that matter are almost always around resonance. Like, are people passionately engaging with this? Do we have what my friend Jay Akunzo calls it's his like metric for success is URR, unsolicited reply rate. I'm not asking you to reply. I'm not asking you to comment, but how many times are people just raving like replies back to me? That's how I know it's working.
Yeah, that's a good one. Fuck, I just lost the thread here.
Good.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. I was thinking about where do you think that kind of checkbox marketing comes from? Is it like the C levels in the company? Is it the sales culture? Like who to blame for it?
I don't know if it's a blame. I think it's just like a pattern, right? Yeah. Like you get comfortable. And the pattern is that we don't know the impact of things. Like I have not jokingly, it's real. I have a spreadsheet that made me quit my job at my last in-house role. And it was just an endless thing. My boss was kind of just like kept stacking endless. I had a great boss. He left. I got another boss. And I was just endlessly getting stacked. Somebody had like left. So I had been doing 2 jobs for 6 months. One of them unpaid. They were like, just cover for it. Okay. That happens. That grinds my gears more than anything. Like somebody leaves
2 jobs instead of 1.
Yeah, just cover for their work and we're never going to pay you another dime and we're going to like tell you didn't meet your metrics at your core job because you were doing anyway, it's bad. But in this spreadsheet, it was just like, how many are we going to do with this and that? And I mentioned earlier that I'd uncovered this like huge email list that they wanted an email newsletter. We weren't sending them an email newsletter.
Yeah, crazy.
Before I was allowed to send one, I had to tell them I had not sent one. And they were like, how many trials is this going to generate? How many of this? How many website clicks? And I'm like, first of all, that's not how you do a newsletter. A newsletter is not to get website clicks. Like this is not direct response marketing. All these different issues. Just I could tell from the beginning it was just wrought with failure at the end of the road, right? And I was working through that spreadsheet and I was just like, look, like this is exactly what it looks like. And I think it was just the failure to transition. You asked me like, where does this come from? It's a failure to transition from output metrics to impact metrics. Now, sometimes we go impact too fast. We're like, what's going to be the impact before you do any of it? And it's like, you gotta let people try it first to know what it could do. Like we have to set a baseline and then we're looking to improve. But a lot of times we start with output. All right, we're just getting started with this motion of blogging. Let's do 1 blog per week and just see how it goes. Let's do something sustainable and see and that's the right move. But eventually we get addicted to traffic or whatever. We had when I was in-house, we had the great traffic panic of whatever 2022 or whatever it was, where like traffic went down a lot, but it was traffic to like, what is an SDR? Company slogans, like blogs that didn't matter to the business, but they were big traffic and they were like, get the traffic back. How? Why? We still rank number 1 for this. Yeah. People are just Googling it less. Like, how do we get it back more than ranking number 1? Things like that. So I think it's just that failure to transition and be like, all right, here's the actual impact of this, which is something. If only we had a company that showed the impact of our content work, right?
No, it's so that's really also, I think it's a company culture thing. Like, do you just instill bureaucracy, like having to provide a business case for every single thing that people want to do, or is it okay if people start small or just running one experiment and then they can say sorry if they fuck up on something? And I've that's the kind of what we're trying to do here at Dream, that like it's okay to act, just kind of do it like at a minimum viable project kind of thing, and then you can come and explain with a lot more trustworthiness whether it works or whether it doesn't work.
Yep. Yeah,
But
and I think about it like I think it's Coca-Cola. Google might have something similar where it's like a 70-20-10. Like 70% are like pretty firm, confident bets. 20% are like a little bit risky. We're not super sure. Maybe we have some like leading indicators. And then the 10% is like, let's just take some moonshots. Let's just try some wild stuff that we didn't know. It might not be big budget, but it could have a big outcome. But it's only 10% of our time. So like, who cares?
Yeah, one of the things that I think that got me out of I can still go into like once in a while go into that checkbox marketing where there's just a month where it's just kind of, what's the next blog post? What's the next live? What is the next kind of ad we're running? But one of the things that I think that was important for me in my marketing career was back when it was cool to be a growth hacker, which I actually think underneath all the hype, there was actually a very legit framework, which was being rational about what you do, estimating kind of what is the impact, what does your gut feeling tell you, how easy it is to execute these things, and then you would force to line up all your projects in a spreadsheet, and then you choose the one that you believe, or the ones you believe the most in. But then you were also forced to do kind of a feedback loop or a learning loop after the experiment, saying this worked, this didn't work, etc. Because to me, checkbox marketing is just doing stuff without actually considering, are we getting enough out of it? Could we double it? Can we get other guests and so forth? So that notion about reflecting upon any marketing activity actually as an experiment, and an experiment has a design, it has an end date, it has some results. And once that's completed, that's when you look at it and decide whether you want to do more or less of it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think also just the simple idea of having to check this box every week. I asked somebody, I was such a terrible employee, because it would be like, we're doing one blog a week. And I'm like, why not none? Why not a blog every other week? Why not 6 blogs a week? Why not? Why not? I need you to tell me why one. And there was never, that's what really like would grind my gears about that. It's like there was never an explanation as to why it was a certain number per time period. One webinar per month, one webinar, like why not 12? Why not 100? Right? Like let's actually have a thoughtful discussion about like why this specific number during this time period. Why don't we stop blogging and do 40 webinars a month? I don't know. I'm making up numbers. And I even honestly, Steffen, like I don't want to front that I've got it all figured out. I fall into checkbox too. Right. I'm like, well, we got to get out the email. We got to get I've got to post on LinkedIn every day, but I'm always testing things. Like I remember I was thinking about like upside risk versus downside risk. So downside risk would be like, I want to know if LinkedIn is super important in my business. I know it is because I look at self-reported attribution and a couple other things. And I also not to sales pitches, but I also use like the free version of Dreamdata on my website. Like I get a lot of like cool information about that and everything. I understand like how channels connect with each other and how they turn into customers in my business. But the downside risk version would be like, stop posting on LinkedIn, see if it hurts pipeline. Most of us can't take that risk in our business, where it would be like, well, we proved it, it's important, but now we got to make up this pipeline. We got to make like revenue's going to be down. Let's do upside risk. I was like, what if I posted twice a day on LinkedIn for a couple months? Then what happens? In doing that experiment, I realized, Steffen, no change. No upside to posting twice as much.
I was listening to a podcast with Jason Lemkin from SaaStr, and he said like, that was like in the summer, and he said like, I have 2 posts scheduled from now until New Year's. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the same. So for like 3 months, I did 2 posts a day, and I really don't feel that it's more effective than just doing 1 post. But it was an experiment also, and I was considering what's the cost. It's zero cost. I could just recycle some of the other posts, and I have a colleague schedule them, no problem.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of ways to do this, right? Where it doesn't turn into checkbox. But not to call him out, but they made I'm trying to find it right now. They made a job posting where they were like, we are hiring for a head of content, and here's our current output. And I was absolutely stunned. It's something like over, I'll pull the actual numbers here in a
Their
second.
output is insane.
It's
And I would
in
say to their benefit that it's a lot of it, like they really know who follows SaaS companies. So a lot of it is high quality as well.
a lot of it is, but I do really wonder. It was something like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it right now, but like,
Yeah.
I do really wonder if it's the right amount, because it's something like over 1,000 blogs a year. It's really an astronomical
Yeah, that's the
amount.
Gary Vaynerchuk approach.
Yeah, and it's like, I just don't know. Like, that's fine, but like, I don't know if that's actually doing anything. I don't know. Yeah, here it is. It says, looking for a head of content at Sasser. And I'm not calling out Jason. I think he
No,
does a
no.
lot of great work.
Yeah.
We produce each week, Steffen, each week, 20 pieces of blog content per week, 2 podcasts, 1 YouTube video, a workshop Wednesday, 4 newsletters per week, 21 Q&A answers and LinkedIn content, and a new digital series
Hats off.
every single week. And I'm
That's a
like,
lot.
and that's fine, but you have to realize Jason's business is not your business. He is
Mm,
a media company.
yeah.
The media is the product.
Yeah.
They monetize eyeballs with sponsors and their events.
Yes. True.
You probably run a software company. You are not a media company.
No.
So should you copy that playbook? Should you copy the Gary Vaynerchuk playbook? I have just wrote up a post like Gary made some predictions for 2025 content, and I was like, God, I normally disagree with everything that dude says.
Yeah.
I thought some of them were pretty good. Like, I get it. So
I,
sometimes
I
these
think.
people are
Yeah.
right, but could you imagine 20 pieces, 20 plus blogs per week?
I
Do
wouldn't even
those
know
all
what
need?
to write. Yeah.
What do we even do? It just sounds like we're just taking anything and everything and making it a short blog on the website.
Yeah.
And like, I get it that it might do something in aggregate, but this is you risk causing a lot of damage, because there's no, to my point, to bring this full circle, there is
Mm.
no why.
Oh.
Why 20 blogs per week? Why not 50? Why not 1?
Yeah.
If you're going to post a job and you're going to say, hey, we have this outrageous output, blah, 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 like that feels like checkbox marketing. And that feels like somebody who
Mm.
comes in is going to have to either, like, they're not going to be cool with you coming in and being like, I think we should dial this back like 90%, And also,
But
they didn't mention, just one more thing. Sorry to
yeah.
cut you off. There's no unique premise. Like, I need a premise. And what I mean by premise is, unlike every other blog about this topic, only we do this. Unlike every podcast about B2B SaaS, only we do this.
Yeah.
We have to have a unique premise to if we're going to do any sort of like marketing activity. That's, I think, the other piece that like doesn't show up in checkbox marketing. It's just output and it's not premise. And I've started to find over time, premise is everything.
That kind of sets me off on kind of when I reflect on our best content, it has always been when we utilize our unique access to go-to-market data. Everybody eats that up because they can't get it anywhere else. But whenever we do semi-generic thought leadership pieces on whatever is the latest trend, like nobody reacts to it. There's no of these, what did you call them? ERRs? Or what
Yeah,
was it?
the URR unsolicited reply,
Nothing
right?
of
Yeah.
that when you do generic stuff. Brendan,
Yep.
just because it's kind of a big part of our playbook as well, like can you just do 1 minute about how you translate your LinkedIn reach engagement to business?
Yeah, of course. So I think just to your point, if I can yes and what you just said, just so people
Yeah.
know, I think it was this might be older. I think you've redone this since then, but it sticks in my head of like I was obsessed for a while. Like, we know our sales cycle. We don't know our marketing cycle.
Yeah.
Like, nobody expects the sales team. Like, if you have a 6-month sales cycle, nobody expects an AE to come in and close everything in 2 months. That would be dumb, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
no. We know this is about how long it takes to close these deals. But for some reason, the marketing cycle, we expect it to be like 24 hours. Wait, you mean after they raise their hand, it takes them 6 months to get the deal done, but we expect the consideration phase to be 1 day?
Yeah.
Of course not. It's
Yeah.
probably way bigger. And then you all came out with data of like, it's actually 192 days.
Yeah.
And I think Chili Piper looked at their own internal data and was like, yeah, it's actually closer to 300 days.
Yeah.
And it's like that. Thank you. Like, let's make marketing cycle a real thing where it's like the stuff I do now will probably pay off and close, like move somebody to raising their hand in 200 to 300 days. It's not necessarily going to be in. And I know everybody's like, you got to move the needle in quarter. Cool. But know that you're moving the needle on people that already are in that marketing cycle, right? You can maybe accelerate, like accelerating sales is a thing. Accelerating marketing is a thing. You can take somebody, my friend Devin Reed and I were just talking about like the ability to take something that felt low priority and make it high priority. We can do that with marketing. But I think that's a big, to your point, your data is definite. And I think every company is like, you can find unique insights that nobody else has. And you can do these through surveys, interviews, or your own data.
Yeah. We're actually dropping some new benchmarks on the first day, the 6th of March. So people should stay tuned. But the journey is getting longer, I can say. But coming back to the question,
I was hyping it up too much. Ask me your question again. I apologize.
It's just because we do so much stuff on LinkedIn as well, and I was just curious, kind of, what's kind of your 1-2 things that works when. Over the past couple of years, we've created a lot of awareness for our brand, but I think the challenge that all of us face is that we create awareness. But how do you then take that awareness and make that become like actual outreach to you, whether that's a demo call or a DM or whatever it is?
Yep. So I look at it first of all, I know that I am smart enough to know that a lot of attribution is flawed. It's all flawed. We just have to agree like what flaws we are okay with, what we aren't. And we know the upsides and downsides. So we know that things are going to, like I came up in the SEO world. We talked about that. SEO, whether it's first click or last click or whatever, a lot of times that people use is going to favor SEO because people Google the brand name at the end and they come in on a rando blogs post for the first touch. And all of a sudden, like, it looks like, wow, SEO is killing it. And it's like, maybe not as much as we'd like to take credit for, right? So I think like I look at self-reported attribution a lot.
Yeah.
I also, and I'll be honest, like I've noticed this phenomenon a lot lately. People come in, they fill this out. They're like, I've been following for years. Love your LinkedIn stuff. Never heard of them. They don't comment. They don't interact. They haven't connected with me. They've never DM'd me. Super common, right?
Yeah.
People, all those little impressions, when you see 8,000 impressions on a post, those are real people and they are really consuming it, right?
It's really kind of the definition of the tip of the iceberg you see as a creator or whatever you want to call it, that there's a few people that comment, a few people that text you, but the most of the value is creating where you're opening doors you don't even see or hear about.
Yep. My friend Taz Bober talks a lot about consumption over conversion. I just want people to consume it. I'm not asking you to convert here. I don't want you to book I do. I want to be salesy. I think a lot of marketers play small and they're like, well, we don't want to push too hard. We don't want to be salesy. Wrong. Push a little bit. Like if you're pushing too hard, people will tell you, or just they'll stop engaging because it's corny and it's just like, buy my stuff. Like you're probably okay going a little closer to the sales side of things.
So what's the brand and push?
The way I do this is, and this is what I did for years. I also used to train a lot of agencies. I worked with a company that did a lot of SEO agency training. So this is what we taught. I was the prototype for it. I have kind of like, I post a lot of different things and I have a lot of different ways I think about posting, but the way I post on LinkedIn is I find a problem. I name that problem. I call this process content IP. We can talk about that if that's helpful. But for each piece of IP I have, like checkbox marketing, I talk about the problem. I talk about the first roadblock you're going to run into when you try to solve this problem. I give people a template or a framework to solve the problem. I talk about how I've helped a client solve that problem. Like I recently made a bunch of posts about like my waterfall content strategy. That is a big way that we help solve checkbox marketing is we create something with a unique premise and we waterfall it down. I'm happy to talk about that too. And then do some digging, be an explorer, be a journalist, look up other people that have solved this problem. Like when I was doing only SEO and that was the only thing, that's the other cool thing is like over time, I've done more marketing and people are like, wait, you have a 20,000 person newsletter. Can you help us with our newsletter? Hey, you have a 1,000+ person vibrant community that people seem to really
Yeah.
love. We have a community. Can you help us? So
I was
things like
actually,
that are getting
I was just
added.
reflecting, Brendan, but what something you've done. I don't know, you're probably part of the game, but you've actually set up a bunch of micro conversion opportunities for people. So it's not buy my consultancy contract right now. You can kind of sift into the newsletter, or you can go into the community just because you found that one post by Brendan pretty nice, and then you can kind of continue the warm up. And I think that's a
Yep.
good reflection to. There's a lot of B2B companies that doesn't have offer enough micro conversions. It's kind of either book a demo call or get off our site, but that's not kind of how dating works. You need to like allow people to softly get closer to you, and that I've just signed up to the community today, and I'm not
I
even
saw
on the
you join.
newsletter, but I've I've been following you along on LinkedIn for a while. But if you don't have to offer those micro conversions, it's hard for people to just kind of get closer without having to sign a contract.
100%. I'm also obsessed. This is something I don't sell, but something I end up helping a lot of clients with anyways, which is just like mid funnel.
Yeah.
Most software companies think they conflate their business offer and their marketing offer. Your business offer is your software, right? Or
Mhm.
there might be some service revenue along with that. Your marketing offer, unfortunately, a lot of people just think those are like white papers. How do I get
Mhm.
how do I gate this? How do I get the downloads, right? That's their like mid funnel offer. And it's awful. There are so many more creative, interesting mid
Yeah.
funnel offers out there. And we just don't create enough mid funnel offers to push people to when they do come in on LinkedIn, or they do come to the blog, or they sign up for our email list and things like that. There's so many. I mean, how many books do I have on the shelf back here from software companies? A lot. The answer is a
Mhm.
lot. And I still can't believe more companies don't have books about
Yeah.
the core problem they solve, about their content IP. I think it's one of the coolest things to be able to send somebody. I remember Drift, I got so mad at them. They were running all these ads for books, and they showed us big, cool, well-designed, thick book. And I'm like, cool. So
I want it.
I
Yeah.
put my email in, and they're like, here's a PDF. And I was like, how do I get the book? They're like, it's not a book. And I'm like, you guys suck. Now I'm mad because I want your book. I want to buy this. You
Yeah.
showed me a physical thing. I want to purchase it. I want
Yeah.
it to sit on my shelf. Like, I want to read
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I love that. So like, I'm reading, I literally have it in my bag right here. This is the power of a book. Is like here, I'll show you. Oh God, what books do I have in here right now? I have Perennial Seller by Ryan Holiday, his book about how to write a good book.
Plug,
Ironically
plug,
enough,
plug.
his worst selling book. It's his work. Like, he's like, this is the book about how to write a book is the worst selling one. And I also have Super Agency by Reid Hoffman. Like, my friend
Nice.
Amanda Natividad sent me a couple of these, and I'm reading it right now. Like, that is such a different. Could you imagine if Amanda was like, here's a PDF?
Yeah.
It'll go in my Dropbox to die. I'll
Yeah.
never look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
has sat in my bag for like a week or two, and I'm reading it. But anyways, my point is, there are so many cool. It could be a challenge, a community, something. There's so many creative mid-funnel offers you can have as a software company. The problem is people feel like they have to just keep getting the demo. And because these mid-funnel offers are not pipeline, either we try to make them be pipeline, which is bad. Don't do
Yeah.
that. Don't just BDR people to death. But also,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, you sign up
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
something,
Totally.
you go to a
It's
webinar,
actually.
and then you get 27 emails in a row. You're like, I don't. Like, I have other SEO agencies BDRing me, and I'm like, guys, just look at your list. You can see I'm not going to buy your services.
We actually a year or two back we studied our own kind of conversions, newsletters versus demo, and if we found out that newsletters almost converted as good as a demo call, it just took like 6 or 12 months longer than the demo call. And it's
Yep.
because like people are interested, they want to know more, but they don't want to talk yet.
Yep.
So like really don't underestimate the power of those mid funnel kind of conversions that you can do.
If people
Sounds
want
like a
ideas,
piece of content
Steffen,
here.
I did a post where I asked people, I'm like, give me your company and I will give you a mid funnel offer
Mm,
idea. And I replied to every single comment, hundreds
nice.
of comments. I did the same thing with content. I made a post like 2 weeks later. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give you a unique content idea. Just tell me your company and what you do."
Sweet.
Right.
Super nice.
And like, there, that exists. I'll put that. If anybody wants that, I will hit me up on LinkedIn. If you're watching this, listen to this, hit me up on LinkedIn. I will send you a link to that post. I'll send you that list, and you'll be like, oh my God, here's 200 really cool mid funnel ideas that
That's
you could
fantastic.
literally just steal all of them. I don't know if any of those companies are actually going to use them, but there's a lot of gold in there. And I think that that's like a huge thing that's wide open that also helps pull us out of like the checkbox marketing.
Cool. Okay, Brendan. Time is flying so fast. I'm having to pick between all the questions. You do have a framework that you run by, which I think would be wonderful for us who are listening and speaking with you to know a little bit more about. Can you kind of lay out the kind of the ABC or 1, 2, 3 of kind of the framework you do apply when you work with your customers?
Yeah. So it's usually a couple there, it depends on what they need, right? Like but the framework that I generally start from, my service is somewhat productized, which is good, right? It's, we know these things work. Let's figure out what works best for them. It's usually a mix of community-led marketing, a mix of what I call demand-focused content, which is like, how do we generate demand? How do we build audience? Revenue-focused content, which is our more like down funnel. They're in some sort of consideration phase. They are, if we think about Eugene Schwartz, like levels of awareness, right? Like problem aware, solution aware, product aware, etc. They're product aware. They know we exist, or they're at least solution aware. They're looking for a solution. That's that like revenue focused content. And then authority building, like how do we build that audience of amplifiers? And amplifiers are, it's something I'd never heard a lot of people talk about. I got this from Rand Fishkin,
Yeah,
of
I
just like,
saw.
these are
Yeah.
people who won't buy from you, but they will amplify your message to other places.
Mm.
These are really valuable people to have in your audience. But that authority building ranges everything from like, how do we build those amplifiers, to really tactical things like, how do we get more backlinks to our website? It's an
Yeah.
important part of SEO still. How do we do that without begging for them or buying them? Like, so those kind of 4 pieces is usually a big part of it. And then we drill down like they're in where they need the most help, and also like where we can make the right bets. I think in bets a lot,
Yeah.
like confident
Where
bets,
do you
quick
start
wins.
between the 4 if you choose yourself, or if you get to decide?
So it depends on what they already have. If we're starting from scratch, I want to start with the most confident bets and the quickest wins. Usually that's that like multi-channel content that could be something. A good example of it might be like versus pages or competitor pages, that like bottom
Mm.
of funnel search related stuff, but it's also really good sales enablement. If you do it well, it's really good buyer enablement.
Yeah.
Um, Sendoso has a great versus page where they have these like yellow sticky notes on the page. That's like, hey, are you trying to make a buying case for this? Click click copy on the sticky note and paste it into Slack to your boss.
Need to go check that out.
We're
Actually, in
not, and
my
it's not getting enriched. Nobody's like, nobody's going to inbound lead outbound you for clicking that thing. It's just good. It's the right thing to do because it helps people make that, oh, cool. I don't have to like try to explain direct mail and gifting to my boss now.
yeah,
Awesome. Copy, paste, right? So I would start with something like that. Like if they are
yeah.
Sendoso and they already have that, then maybe we go like different other pieces. But almost always, I don't work with really
Mm.
small companies who have no marketing team, no budget. They're starting from scratch. If you're that, just copy me. Like I'm a solo person.
Yeah.
I have one other person, Lindsay Adams, that I work with. But if that's you, just like look at what I do and copy that. I keep it really small and tight.
Just because you probably know, Brendan, then kind of there's the comparison pages. Kind of what is the classic Brendan toolbox here? There's comparison pages. What are other really high intent types do you typically think about?
Hold on. You want me to just look at a scope? I'll open a scope that I did not too long ago.
I can, while you do that, I can testify that in my old company we did like a comparison article that ranked #1 in the US, and that was a very established brand, and we were a newcomer, and being able to go into that brand name alternative was fantastically
Yep.
good for our sales team.
Yeah, we just want to get in the consideration set. We don't have to
Yeah,
rank #1. We don't have to get people to convert on the page. We're just trying to. This
yeah,
came from when I was in the web design agency. We would get a lot of RFPs, and
yeah,
our goal was just to get in as
yeah.
many RFPs as possible. And I
Yeah.
was like, all right, cool. And that's still how I think about a lot of this, even in SaaS and software. So I'll give you an example. Here's a like pretty established company. They have a really cool kind of business already. They have a marketing team. They have a great leader. We got 3 separate sprints. The first was like more around like content led SEO. So confident bets and quick wins. They already had a huge blog. They could just get 100x more out of it. So we're updating existing pages. We're adding internal links. Internal links I always thought was the best practice, but that is like a hilariously easy way to do better in search. And I looked for quick wins on the technical side. I don't do the like 90,000 point technical audits. We joked about that earlier. Really what I'm looking for from a content lens is are we accidentally like breaking something with our page templates, or something's wrong with the site? Like I had a client recently, a bunch of their pages were no index and they had no idea why.
Yeah.
And I was like, we should fix that, right? But otherwise, it's also like, are we accidentally burying content on the website? Sometimes you have a weird website and maybe you inherited it. You didn't build it yourself while you were there. And then some of the content's 20 clicks from the homepage. Well, if Google's crawlers can't find it and humans can't find it, it's not going to do well for you. Second sprint was more around like bigger bets. So we talked about building an immortal newsletter, which is a unique way that I think about newsletters. It's also the way I run my newsletter as a case study. We started working on content IP. We started working on what I call operationalizing their expertise. So create like doing subject matter interviews, and either that becomes podcast, webinar. There can be like a waterfall approach to this where we start with like a main motion that becomes other things. But having that phased approach and that premise, and then that, like I said, that revenue lead gen type of content, that real down funnel type of piece. And then it's authority building. So how do we have a community-based content distribution strategy where we're surveying? They have a huge email list, so this was an opportunity for them. It's not for everybody. How do we survey our audience, get really unique data points? They don't have to be statistically significant. We're just looking for marketing fodder here, interesting things that'll spark discussions, that'll look good in the blogs and be cool in email, stuff like that. So I don't know. Like I said, it looks different for everybody, but there are a lot of plays. The content distribution strategy, I still think, is a wide open opportunity. The immortal newsletter.
I think that's the one we
Yep.
still do worst in, even though we think about it a lot, content distribution, because if you produce the world's best content, but doesn't get in front of the right people, then it's not going to make a very significant impact for your business.
And I think we still think content distribution is like shoving this stuff down people's throats. Like just spam your links everywhere. Or we're doing content distribution. So we're going to put the link on Twitter. We're going to put it on Instagram. We're going to put it on LinkedIn. We're going to email it. We're going to That's not content distribution. The way I think about it is, how do I get my audience to distribute it for me? And what do we need to do so they feel compelled to do that? And a lot of times, like I'll give people the play just so they can steal it. If you want an example of a company doing this really well, Databox is a great example. That's all John Bonini and Pete Caputa over there. But they're a great example of this. I think they kind of ran this as like their core marketing motion, almost like partner led. But it's just sending out surveys, getting information back. This is hard in some industries, right? Like if you work with KG ICPs, like, in IT and deep tech, or especially in security, where they don't want to like be on 10,000 blog posts, because then you open yourself up to a lot of like phishing and stuff. It doesn't always work, but I think that is like a super easy way to do it, just because when people contribute, by law of reciprocity, they want to share their contribution.
Brendan, now we're really approaching the end, but I wanted to ask you one last question so we get it on tape. Optimizing to get picked up by LLMs, is that something you are doing or betting on at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you my hot take first, and then I'll give you the real answer. My hot take is 99% of the people telling you they know how to do this are full of crap. They have these like LLM crawlers and all this stuff. Mistake. Don't buy into that hype. Don't hire an agency saying they do AI SEO. It is the Wild West still. They have no idea. Here's what I can tell you. This is just my take on it. LLMs are really good at predicting what the next words are going to be. That is literally how large language models work. They say, we're talking about this. I know all the things surrounding that. I can predict what comes next. I want that. If we want to train them to predict that we come next in all of their training data, they need to see our brand name or our data or whatever, our founder's name, our CMO's name, somebody next to the words about what we do. So the easiest way is it's just brand mentions. If we want to like really distill it, the way it seems to work right now and be really effective is just as many brand mentions as possible on pages on the internet that talk about our category, topic, etc. Right? So if I'm Dreamdata, everywhere that we talk about marketing attribution and other things related to what you all do, I want to see Dreamdata, or I want to see Steffen, or I want to see somebody
Mm.
on there. And then when they train on that data, they go, oh, okay, cool. 80% of the places that we saw marketing attribution, we
Yeah,
saw a
yeah,
quote
yeah.
from Steffen, and we saw Dreamdata. So when somebody says, like, what are the best marketing attribution platforms? Dreamdata is number one. Like,
Mhm.
that is very overly simplistic, but I
Yeah.
don't think we have to go more complicated necessarily, just because most of the people talk, like, I've read the guides, the engagement ransom that they do on LinkedIn, where they're like, I put together this epic guide, comment guide, and I'll send it
Yeah.
to you in 3 days. I hate that. But I've read all those. I've opted in for the terrible stuff, and it's just nonsense and conjecture.
Yeah.
Just stick to how we know those models work.
Because it's probably going into the PR company's new pitch that if you want to get
Oh,
picked
I'm
up,
sure it is the new PR. If you want to optimize for this, like, PR
yeah.
is the way to go. And they're not wrong.
And
But
here's
the
our
thing is,
retainer.
they might, it's not about getting in Forbes. It's about getting in all the existing pages,
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it's not kind of for many of the LLMs, it's not completely secret where they train. Like you can ask the LLM and
Yep.
ask it where it got its training material from, and if it tells you a place, then that's probably the place you need to get
Yeah, it's
mentioned.
really easy to be like, give me the sources for this reply. And they're like, here's 4 links. And you're like, cool, I'm
Yeah,
going to reach out to them and
yeah,
try to make sure that we are on these pages.
yeah. Cool, Brendan. We're out of time, so people who are listening, if you want to talk more with Brendan, what should people do?
Oh, LinkedIn is the best place. You can also Google me. Not that you don't see my name or somewhere in here, but if you even misspell my name, it's not because I'm good at SEO. I just have a really unique name. So you can Google me. That'll come up. I think the best place to stay in touch is absolutely LinkedIn. And if I'm doing a good job there, you'll find my newsletter. You'll find everything else that I'm doing. That's definitely the best place to follow along.
Go get the micro conversions as well.
Yep.
But
100%.
cool. If you like the conversation we've just had now with me and Brendan, go search for Attributed, where you listen to podcasts, and you'll find more than 200 other conversations with go-to-market experts like Brendan. So we'll be very happy if you do so. And I think, Brendan, just one last time, thank you so much for spending the time with us. It was super educational for me, and I hope for the people who listen as well. And everybody who's listening, I just want to thank you so much for spending the time with me and Brendan. Have a great day.